Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of Crafting and Crime Daily, the show where I recap live trials. Currently recapping the very interesting trial of Lori Vallow-Daybell. It's wrapping up its, second week? Week number 2, yeah. Wrapping up week number 2. Now court today. Yeah, so tomorrow I will be continuing the trial of Lucy Letby that's being held over in the UK. Prosecution is still putting on their case. They started that trial in November of last year, and the prosecution is still putting on their case. So we're going to go over some more of the babies in that case tomorrow. But today we're going to talk about more of the Lori Vallow-Daybell case. So as everybody knows, well, maybe you don't know, maybe you're new to the channel. Welcome. Love having you. I do crafting while I talk about true crime. I'm diamond painting currently. I've got so much stuff here, good Lord. The little grinder that I bought 100 years ago from Archer's Arts. And when your diamonds are sticking together, you put them in there and you grind them so they come apart. Yeah, I just finished up a section, so I'm actually putting this up for the weekend because this is cross stitch weekend, where I will be getting out my cross stitch. I'm working on a piece of artwork that's called White Santa. Yeah, I didn't name it. It's actually a kit that I got out of. It's called Luca S. It's a Luca S kit, and it comes with absolutely everything you need, and it's a 16 count Ada that it comes with, which I'm comfortable with the 16 count. And if you guys don't know what the heck I'm talking about, I'm sorry. Cross stitch. I'll explain that again someday when I talk about cross stitch. Anyway, so I just want to I'm trying to get this all out of the way so I can show you where I'm at here. Thus far, I'll turn the light pad off. Oh my God, this painting is amazingly beautiful. All right, hold on. This is the side view, and it's the side with all the pink flowers on it. Look how amazing that is. I'm getting ready to do this beautiful blue butterfly, but all of this is done. Man, when this thing comes together, it's going to be stunning. Yes. Now, someone asked me about my calendar. Was I going to do the calendar anymore? Yes, I'm going to pick it up off the floor and do the calendar. Okay. We haven't done it in a while. Oh my gosh, what is it? April? Holy moly, it is April 21st. Look at all this stuff I missed. Someday I'll go back and we'll cover it. But, oh, and this is like a whole parter thing. It started we could just do the whole thing, right? Where does it start? Let me find where it starts. Oh, this is going to be an interesting one. I think it was a whole week-long story. Come on. There we go. Okay, yeah. The shooting of Seth Bishop, the University of Alabama in Huntsville shooting. That should be interesting. Okay, so we'll talk about that later on in the show today. So I got some stuff for you though. First, we got to get business out of the way. It's Friday, and you know what happens on Friday? Everybody out of your chair. If you're new to the channel, this is just a shtick that I do, and it's fun. Everybody out of your chair. Ready? Friday dance. Friday dance. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Friday dance. Okay. That's it. Back to my chair. Okay. So Friday dance. So yesterday, on the stand was some of the different Chandler, Arizona, where Charles Vallow was killed by Alex. He was shot during an altercation that they had. Well, Detective Ariel Werther took the stand. Now, he was not a robbery homicide detective at the time with the Chandler Police Department. He was in the SVU unit, SVU, law and order. Anyway, but he had aspirations of being in the robbery homicide division. So they at this point they would call him out when there was a death, a homicide, and just to kind of tag along and do any tasks that they needed him to do because he wanted to learn it. So he responded out there, and one of the tasks that they gave him was to go out and look for video of, kind of follow where Lori Vallow had been, like. So, and she had openly said during her interview that she had been at the Burger King. So he goes out to the Burger King and he finds some surveillance video of the Burger King, like her pulling up to the drive-through window. And that actually, he put a time on that of 7:55 a.m. Then he was able to get the cell phone records of Charles Vallow because he knew that Charles Vallow's phone was found on Lori. After his death, Lori had his phone. And she says so. Because that's how the whole thing started. She wouldn't give him his phone. So she had his possession of his phone. So if you follow the movement of Charles Vallow's phone that day, it arrives at Lori's house at 7:32 a.m. And it leaves her house at 7:49. So this altercation and shooting of Charles Vallow happens between 7:32 and 7:49. So what is that? 17 minutes for him arriving and then getting into this fight and then getting shot. So she leaves with his phone. She goes to the Burger King. That's at 7:55. Then it was rumored, or he learned somehow, I don't know how he learned from discussing with the other detectives, that she may have stopped at a drugstore to get flip-flops because when they left the house that day, none of them were wearing shoes. Okay, that's so strange. Well, because here's why I think it's strange, because one of the things she had said during her interview to the police was that after she hears the gunshot, she's in the kitchen, she hears the gunshot, she goes out, she sees Charles lying on the floor. Her first instinct is to go be with her kids, but she had also said that when he arrived that morning, JJ was ready to go. Barefoot? And I don't know. I don't get it. Anyway, so she stops to buy flip-flops, but so he's searching all the CVS, and then he searches Walgreens, or when he finds Charles' phone, he sees that it was in the vicinity of a Walgreens. So he goes to this particular Walgreens, and the clerk said, yes, there was somebody in here that meets that description that morning, and she bought some flip-flops, and so he pulled the video of her, and he pulled the receipts for the flip-flops. So that happened between 8:15 and 8:20. Then she drops JJ off at his school at 7:32. So that's the next place Charles Vallow's phone pings, is off the school at 8:32. It is until 8:36. And what is that? 36, 46, 47. 47 minutes later that 911 is called. 47 minutes after she leaves the house, goes to Burger King, goes to Walgreens, goes to drop him off at the school. And so what is Alex Cox doing in 47 minutes while she's gone from this house, that he doesn't call 911? Now, the call comes from Alex Cox, but it takes him 47. He tells the 911 operator that he's doing CPR. For 47 minutes, you did CPR and didn't decide to call 911. Neither does she. Lori doesn't call 911 while she's running all her little errands. The first officer's not on the scene until 8:42, and then Lori Vallow is not back on the scene until 8:48, 1 hour later. Yeah. Man. So then a guy by the name of Scott Cowden takes the stand. He's a Chandler firefighter. And his testimony was that he arrives on the scene. He sees Charles Vallow lying on the floor, and he's got blood on his shirt. So he lifts up the shirt. He's got gloves on, but he's getting blood on him. He lifts off the shirt because he's been shot twice, and he starts CPR. Now, he said he didn't see any. Usually, he said he's very experienced in this because that's his career. He says when you do CPR, if you're doing it effectively, you would crack a rib or crack, because you're on that sternum and you're going to hear cracking if you're doing it effectively. When he starts doing it, he hears the cracking. Now, he said if someone had been doing it effectively before he got there, everything would be fractured already. He wouldn't be hearing the cracking. And he did not see any. Usually you can see some indentations of where people are doing the CPR, He didn't see any indentations except for his own when he stopped doing CPR. Yeah. So, and, he had blood all over him. Not all over him, but he had blood on him after he was done doing the CPR. But interesting to note, Alex, who was there for 47 minutes by himself and said he did CPR, had no blood on him. What was he playing? Video games? What was he doing? I don't know. Okay. I just thought all that was really interesting testimony. So then they also had testimony of David Warwick, who is married to Melanie Gibbs. However, they live in different places. Probably because of their careers, they married later on in life. They were both married to other people. He was in the midst of a divorce, in the process of getting a divorce. When he met her, she was already divorced, and that's when they started their relationship. So before he even got to testify, there was, outside the presence of the jury, there was some discussion because he had brought it to the state's attention that he had violated the exclusionary rule. Now, what the exclusionary rule is, and it's in most places. I did not see it in the Alex Murdaugh trial, the exclusionary rule. Usually at the start of a trial, they'll say, I'm going to invoke the rule. And that's what I would say as a lawyer. Your Honor, I'd like to invoke the rule. And when you invoke the rule, that means no one that is listed on the witness list that's expected to testify can be inside that courtroom or can talk about the case or listen to the case or look it up on YouTube. You're not allowed to do anything regarding the testimony or anything about that case until you're done with your testimony. Now, in the Alex Murdaugh case, like I said, we didn't see the rule invoked, and, Buster was in there, and everybody was in the courtroom. But here, the judge has said, this judge is very strict. No cameras, no cell phones. Boy, when one goes off, I think he has the bailiff take it away from them. So, and he invokes an exclusionary rule, and he'll sit down with every witness before they start talking, and he'll say, have you looked up this case on the internet? Have you read any articles about the case? Have you discussed this case with anyone? No. The answer should be no. But with David Warwick, the answer was yes. And here's how he explained it. He said he's been very, very sick and that he's just recently got onto antibiotics within the last couple of days just so he could come testify. Sounded like he had maybe an upper respiratory thing going on. And that he was very, very sick when his wife testified last week, and he wasn't able to come here with her, and she was kind of disappointed that he couldn't come with her. Did I mention they live in different states? She lives in Arizona, and he lives in Utah, but they're still married. Anyway, I think it's the best kind of marriage. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Yes. I think that would be perfect. I'll marry you if you live in another state. Just send me a paycheck every now and then. We'll get together every now and then I get to come back to my house and do my crafting. Stay up late playing video games. Yeah, anyway, just saying. So, married to Melanie Gibbs since 2021. They got married, I'm thinking of February, March of 2021. So he first met Lori at her home in Arizona. He believes this was in the first week of August of 2019. He doesn't know when this, how, he said it was after Charles's death, but he didn't know how soon. Well, if it was the first week in August, it was only a couple of weeks after Charles's death. And when he was asked on the, well, let me back up. So, despite having violated this rule, where did I leave off here? I'm so confused. Okay. So, because he wasn't able to attend the trial with his wife, he was concerned for her welfare and he wanted to know how she was doing. So he turned on YouTube and he looked around. He said it was either, I was hoping he'd say Crafting and Crime Daily. I was watching Crafting and Crime Daily. No. East Idaho News or Hidden Crime. Those are two other people covering the case. And he said he looked at there and he saw that that East Idaho News posts the audio every night. That's how I sit and listen to the audio. And you have to buy it. So East Idaho News purchases the audio and then they separate out each witness and they post it every night. So he saw his wife's testimony and he started watching it just to see if she was okay. He doesn't remember what the testimony was about. He says, I was underwater at this point. I was really sick, but I wanted to see how she was doing. And they said, well, how did you think she was doing? He says, well, she seemed very somber. Now he's only listening to the audio. He's not seeing her, but from listening to the audio, he said he felt she was very somber. But at about 45 minutes in, he realized, oh, wait a minute, the judge had said I couldn't do this. So he stopped. And then he said he didn't read anything else. It didn't affect what he was going to say on his testimony. He's testified under oath several times in this matter, including in front of a grand jury. So they let him proceed to testify. So now, let's go back to where I left off here. He met Lori at her house in Arizona in August, a couple of weeks after Charles died. And interestingly enough, when he goes to meet Lori at her house, there's Chad, Melanie Boudreau, Zulema Pastemis. He said there was another woman there. Alex was there. It was the entire little group, their little group. They were all there. So he meets them all. And then later on, he was planning to go to Idaho for a Book of Mormon conference. And Melanie says, hey, why don't we stay at my friend Lori's house? And he's like, oh, okay. So he goes there and he said Chad was trying to teach him his beliefs. And he wasn't buying it because he's also a Mormon. He converted to Mormon. And he said, that it was he and Lori's calling to bring together the 144,000. And he said, now, that's not what the Book of Mormon teaches us. That if anybody's going to gather 144,000, it's going to be a prophet through, Jesus is going to do it through a prophet. And he even said who the name of the prophet was at the time. There's somebody in the church. Not you, Chad Daybell. So, and then he was also talking about how Satan had the power to push people out of their bodies and these evil spirits would come in. And this guy was like, no, Satan is not given that kind of power. No, and you know that. So he was calling him on his BS. So during that visit, they both went to look at this property. Well, first they went with Lori and Chad to visit this church and this property that was on the east side of the church. And Lori and Chad swore up and down that they could see a temple there. And they're like, don't you see it? It's right there. Don't you see it? And he's like, no, I don't see it. They're like, oh, it's so beautiful. It's right there. And he's like, nope, don't see it. So then there was an 80-acre property that Chad wanted him to go see. He had David Warwick is a general contractor. So he had a client who was interested in purchasing property in Idaho to do some development. And so they knew about this 80-acre property, and Chad had said, let's go out and see it. And he says, I don't work on Sundays. This is Sunday. He says, but I'm going to go out there. I'm going to drive by and just take pictures of the realtor sign. So he goes out to take pictures of the realtor sign, and here comes Chad with a realtor. And he says, I did not know Chad was going to be there. And when he gets out of the car with the realtor, he says, Todd, I told you I don't work on Sundays. And, so that evening, Sunday night, he is doing a podcast with Lori and Melanie. Apparently Lori and the three of them do these podcasts. Now, I don't know if he podcasts by himself for the most part, but Melanie and Lori had a podcast, and I don't know where the podcast was broadcast. I don't know if it was on YouTube or Amazon, or I have no idea. But the way that David described it is that it's an educational podcast where they do topics within the church, and they discuss those topics, and their audience is basically to convert people, to get them to become part of their faith, Jesus of Latter-day Saints. That's the purpose of the podcast. So that night at the kitchen counter, it was him, Melanie, and Lori doing this podcast. So did he see JJ during all this time? Well, yes, he did. When he went there to stay for the conference, this was in September, the end of September, he saw, when they were doing the podcast, JJ was not there. And he said, where's JJ? And Lori said he was acting up, and she didn't want to be interrupted, so Alex was babysitting. He said later on that evening, Alex came in the door carrying JJ, who was asleep on his shoulder. He thinks he was wearing, shorts and a t-shirt, maybe some camouflage shorts. And, JJ was asleep, and Alex carried him up to bed. So during that night, and we heard Melanie testify about this too. He woke up he said it was the worst nightmare I've ever had in my life. And so Melanie was next to him, and she said, hey, and he was very, very disturbed by this nightmare that he had just had. And so Melanie says, let me go down and get Chad to give you a blessing. Now, when the defense on cross-examination tried to make a big deal of this, like, did you want a blessing from Chad? Because, you don't believe anything Chad has to say. You want him. He says, I was so disturbed by this nightmare. I just Melanie wanted to go get him to give me a blessing, and I was okay with that. So then he says, well, what is a blessing? And he says, certain people within this church are ordained to give these blessings. I guess it's more like when they pray for you, but you're supposed to gain from that comfort and camaraderie, I don't know, healing. So he was asked by the defense attorney, what did you expect to get from this blessing? And he said, comfort. So, but Melanie couldn't find Chad. Remember, she went and knocked on the door, and no answer. Lori and Chad's door, no answer. So also on Cross, it came out that this guy's got some weird ideology as well. I don't know if this is a thing with that church where they all just run rampant with these weird visions and dreams. And so one of the things, because this guy was a frequent speaker at the Preparing the People conferences and the Book of Mormon conference, he was a speaker. And what he was speaking about was his visions and dreams. And some of his visions were that there was a secret combination in Washington. I don't know what that means. That there's a secret combination in England and Saudi Arabia. No idea what that means. That there were evil entities in England. That he had visions of Russia and China invading the U.S., and he also had visions that Russia and China defeated us in 3 days, and that the U.S. was being sacrificed in favor of a one-world government. Now, I don't think that's so far-fetched, actually. I don't believe it, but could it happen? Listen, Russia and China, we know they're getting together. We know that. We know that Russia and China are in bed together. But, and a one world government, I don't want to be around when it happens, but that could happen. But anyway, he explained that these visions were, that they were, he said these different from nightmares. Nightmares, he says, you're a part of these things. It's almost like it's happening to you. Whereas a vision is where someone is showing you something, and these angels would come down from under God, and they would show him these visions about these combinations. And are you buying it? I'm sorry. Okay. I would have asked him, like, hey, did you ever ask your wife, Melanie, about, I don't know. Because Melanie fell for Chad and Lori, hook, line, and sinker, and apparently was trying to get him to go along with it, and he wasn't going along with it. I'd just be curious what the conversations were between the two of them with respect to Chad and Lori's beliefs and why Melanie was believing these things, and did he talk her out of it? And yeah, I don't know. Anyway, that was his testimony. So, no testimony today. This will continue on Monday. Like I said, tomorrow I'm going to bring you Lucy Letby. Yep, I haven't covered that in a couple weeks, and there's plenty to cover. So I'll do that, and then Monday I'm going to do a true crime story for you guys. I got to find one. If you have a suggestion, I am part of a Discord. The link to my Discord is down in the description. Join the Discord. There's a suggestion chat. Just go in the chat and tell me what your suggestion is, and I'll be happy to look into it. So meanwhile, have a great weekend. I will be live on Sunday at 11 a.m. Just general chit chat. Yeah, just come in, say hi to me, 11 a.m. Central Time, and I will see you then.